How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? I'm Sean from Carson Classic Motors, and today we'd like to mix things up a little bit. We've been doing classic antique British motorcycles and Harley Davidsons. Today, we'd like to start you off with a custom Triumph.
So as Sean said, last week we continued with our stock and restoration motif, and this week we're going to break away from that and continue with a 1964 Triumph custom bobber. The difference between a bobber, you hear the words bobber and chopper and custom thrown around a lot, but the difference between a chopper and a bobber, the chopper is known for its long stretched out front end, whereas the bobber is kind of short, petite, and you can really throw it around. You can't really throw around a chopper as you're riding it, but with the bobber you can. It's really the sportier custom. So today we have the 1964 Triumph. It's a 650 motor, but it has a 750 Bonneville twin carb head. So for many, when you think of the 1960s, you think of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. There were definitely a lot of drugs involved, but another aspect of the 60s that you don't really hear much is customizations. In the 1960s, you had guys who really didn't have a lot of money that would take their brand new Triumph, or their used Triumph, or Harley, or whatever motorcycle they were able to afford, and they would, on the weekends, maybe they wanted to customize it. So they'd sit in their garage, and I'm not going to endorse any kind of drug taking, but there was obviously, for some guys, drugs were an option to customize their bikes. They'd sit in their garage and they'd maybe tear off the front fender, or they'd cut apart the frame and stretch it and lengthen it, or they'd make a bobber out of it. And so this is a custom bobber. It was restored recently by Randy Baxter of Baxter Cycle in Marne, Iowa. It's the quintessential 1960s piece. When you think of the movie Easy Rider, released in 1969, Dennis Hopper, I mean, of course, he was riding a Harley Davidson Panhead that he customized, but this is in the same kind of fashion as Easy Rider. So you may be asking yourself, what makes this a bobber? And in this case, the bobber is known for its hardtail rear end. There's no shock absorbers on it. Now this hardtail has been stretched out by about 3 inches, meaning that the rear frame has been welded to an extension that's about 3 inches long. This makes the bike a little bit longer in the wheelbase. Like I said, there's no shock absorbers whatsoever. The only suspension you have is located on the front end. Other than that, it's a pretty hard ride. Continuing on, you have your motor, which I said earlier is a 650 motor with a 750cc head on it with a twin dual carb concentric amyl carburetor setup. It has straight pipes on it, meaning that there are no baffles in it. There's no mufflers, so it's very, very loud. It's not your stock Triumph Bonneville. Some of the other custom features on the bike, you can see that it has highway pegs. Highway pegs are used when you're on the road and you don't use the normal foot peg. It allows you to stretch your legs out and put your feet up some. What's interesting about these highway pegs are that they're actually railroad spikes that have been chromed and welded together. That's a feature that's pretty typical of the 1960s, something you would find on a period bike in the 1960s. Continuing up, you have the original speedometer and tachometer. A lot of guys in the 1960s wanted to keep it street legal so that the police wouldn't be coming after them. So they would continue to use the stock chronometric speedometer and tachometer. You also have on the rear, continuing on with the custom pieces on this bike, you have on the very back end the famed sissy bar. It was pretty noted in the 1960s. A lot of custom bikes today still use sissy bars. It's so your rear passenger can have a backrest of some sort, or you can also put your bag back there in true 1960s fashion. You have a custom rear chrome fender on it. It's not the actual bob style. The bob style would be a little bit shorter, but it's a custom fender, it's a pretty good touch on the bike. You have the typical bobber taillight on it, small lens, and all the electrics on this bike are 12 volts. It has a battery on it. You have here on this side, actually on both sides, you have passenger pegs for the passenger that sits up here. It's really pretty uncomfortable, but in the 60s, it was all about the style. This bike also, for modern convenience, it has a battery tender to keep the battery fully charged at all times. You have your rear brake here, Like I said, you have dual amyl concentric carburetors. You have custom hand grips up here. This is your different switch for your headlight, your horn button, your clutch on this side, front brake on this side. Twist grip throttle here. The ignition switch for this motorcycle is on the other side, hidden in behind the amyl carburetors. And your last major functional piece on this is your oil tank with the typical British custom flag on it. One of the other cool custom features about this Triumph, which you can't really see until it's running, is in the spark plug wires. Feeding off the coil, you can see that it has a red glass tube, and in the red glass tube is a light assembly. So when the machine is running, you can actually see a light up spark plug, which is, kind of cool. Before I do the riding footage, which will come soon, I want to go ahead and start it up to demonstrate the light up plug wires for you. Technical aspects and specifications. I'd like to show you how you start it and run it on. So without any further ado, here we go. Start by turning on your two little petcocks. You prime your carburetors. Ignition on. And it usually starts in one dip. That'll wrap it up for Webisode 5. Join us next week as we continue with the Carson Classic Motors collection. From Sean and I, thanks again for all your support.